In the summer of 2023, a fantastic movie was released that explored the invention of an item and its gigantic effects on the world and the people subjected to it. That's right, Barbie. It's Barbie. Now, I went to see Barbie in the cinema. I was a single dude by myself in the back of the cinema, a theatre filled with women of all ages, from young girls to their mothers, and I believe I was the only guy who hadn't just been dragged there by his girlfriend. And I loved it, and I'm sure many of you too also went to see it, right? Oh. Despite being a movie about a corporate product, Barbie is a wonderfully surreal movie that is a lot of fun. It never takes itself too seriously and showcases a wonderful world. On top of that, unlike in 2001, I didn't fall asleep multiple times while watching it. So join me, Callum, an architect, and let's break down Barbie's architecture. Barbieland is a world without aging, a world without death, a world without mistakes. It's just eye candy. It's so fun to look at. It's all so beautiful. It's very, very pink. It's a little bit more pink than I think I've ever seen in my life, and I didn't realise so many shades of pink existed in the world. These aren't my words. No, these are the words of the cast of Barbie. One of the wonderful things about analysing this movie is that they built these sets. Now, that doesn't mean they didn't use CGI. They did. In fact, they even attempt to hide this fact by using green screens in their behind-the-scenes extra features. However, many of the major places within the world of Barbie are fully built sets. This means Barbie's Dreamhouse was actually built by Sarah Greenwood, the production designer, Katie Spencer, the set director, and their team. While they were in the production for the movie, Greta Gerwig, the director, developed a phrase she and the production design team used a lot when referring to Barbieland. Authentically artificial. And you can feel it from the second you see Barbieland. After all, there are no stairs to the Dreamhouse. Barbie simply walks off the frame and walks back onto the frame on the floor below. She showers in a room with no water, then slides down the house to the pool, where the water is plastic and can be walked on top of. Her fridge has a set of actual objects in the door, but simply a large sticker for the rest of the fridge. She pours milk from a plastic carton, only for no milk to leave, even though she seemingly drinks it. The rest of Barbieland plays off this whole aesthetic. The streetlights look plastic, the chairs at Barbie's Peace Prize look plastic, and the marble columns at the Supreme Court look plastic. The planes have no windows, and the horizon is simply a flat wall with no actual depth. The set that perfectly demonstrates this, though, is the beach, with its frozen in time plastic waves. Barbieland itself is inspired by a few different places. The first is some of Slim Aaron's pictures. He was an American photographer who photographed some of America's high society, particularly its socialites. The specific look they used from his photography was the 1970s Palm Spring look. In these photos, he captured the modern aesthetic, the art style, not the phrase for time, and the look of high-end leisure. The next step was to create this world as a giant toy box. The production design team wanted people watching to feel like they could reach through the screen, touch it, and pick it up. This is a toy world where people are dolls. The final reference that they used to tie both of these other inspirations together was old movie musicals, particularly the sound stages and sets of these musicals. Because they were sets, many of these old musicals, instead of trying to create realism, heightened their fakeness, which was used to generate and provide a heightened emotion for the environment within the scene. Now, the sets and sound stages I'm talking about here are the ones used in Francis Ford Coppola's Finian's Rainbow or One from the Heart, and those of old classic musicals such as Mary Poppins or The Wizard of Oz, which I would argue is the most famous movie that showcases these features. Sound stages are still used today, and with the introduction of the volume to modern cinema, a new horizon for sound stages has begun. A soundstage is typically an internal room or space, but the volume extends these spaces beyond it without using a green screen. For the soundstage sets I'm referring to were used to create open outdoor scenes where the simple solution for the background for the location was simply a gigantic matte painting on the back wall. The musicals of the Technicolor age and their sets are wonderful, though unfortunately, perhaps until Barbie, the aesthetic of these musicals has never been able to cross from their genre of musicals. In fact, the attempt to do so with One from the Heart tanked Francis Ford Coppola's production studio. These musicals used the best of what movies had to offer while merging it with the best that plays had to offer, seemingly making even more immersive stages for their sets. These were the perfect way to bring the musical of the stage to the format of the freshly new colour television screen at the time. Rendering sets on stage at the time wasn't necessarily that different from film. They could create lifelike scenes within rooms and simple dwellings, but if you extend the scope of the stage production beyond a single room, beyond the scope of a single dwelling, and into the world, well, a new requirement is born. You can't recreate an entire city square on a stage, you have to fabricate one, faking the use of scale and perspectives to trick the viewer into thinking the set is more extensive than it is, or perhaps embracing the issue and instead using light, colour and texture to instead evoke feelings and emotions rather than a set. These limitations were what birthed these magical sets, and it's ultimately what inspired Barbieland. Barbie's Dreamhouse has a very unique challenge to it. It is a home that has no external walls. The entirety of the space can be seen from the outside. But how close to actual Barbie Dreamhouses is it? Well, not very. You see, the first Barbie Dreamhouse was this box, which you could unfold into a stage play set. You had 3 walls, the sides and the back, and the cardboard furniture which would fill it. And much like a stage set, the 4th wall is missing. This design was a little different from other dollhouses at the time. This was a single-story home for a single woman who was college educated but featured absolutely zero kitchen. There was a living room and a bedroom, but no space for Barbie to be stuck doing domestic labour. The whole dream house was a radical design change from the traditional dollhouses of the era. Then there was the A-frame design for Barbie's dream house, and you'll notice something new. The 4th wall is back. That is right. As it continues to move in a direction quite radical to traditional dollhouses, the building has a front wall. Now, Callum, I hear you say, silly, traditional dollhouses still had a 4th wall, it just opened up for you to play with. Okay, I see your point. But this dream house didn't open up. It broke apart. Instead, it breaks into 3 different sections of the home, where the 4th wall allows the children's hand to fit through the internal spaces of the rooms. This separation also perfectly creates the different internal spaces without any internal walls. Then how about Barbie's Magical Mansion? Here we are getting much closer to the traditional dollhouse, just with the pink and purple, because of course it is, it's Barbie's dream house. This design matches the exterior of the McMansions we see today all over the United States. The suburban 2-story home, though perhaps a little fancier. After all, Barbie is a woman of class. Callum, I hear you say, see, we told you traditional dollhouses opened up for you to play with. Well, haha, this dream house doesn't. Instead, the back wall is entirely missing. The back wall plays the role of the 4th wall. Once again, here in the Barbie's dream house, we're shown a bedroom, a bathroom, a living room, and a dining room. But again, there is no kitchen. Finally, we have Barbie's Funhouse, which was released in 2021, just as the movie was in production. We're avoiding the traditional dollhouse again, this time rather than a single wall being missing, it's a full corner of the building. Though this missing chunk of the building is still used as green space and is the bottom for the slide. Here though, we do see the return of the kitchen. Thank God, Barbie can finally cook for herself again. The issue is that none of these dollhouses resemble or match any of the dream houses shown in the movie. For one, the dream houses actually have external walls. Everything isn't just open. So where can we see this? Well, modern architecture is our closest reference point. Modernism in architecture gained its height in the 20th century, particularly from the 1930s to early 1960s. This makes sense, as Barbie uses this decade as a reference. Modernism was brought into the world by rejecting ornamentation and embracing minimalism. It had a very rigid and analytical approach to buildings, where structure and materials replaced the ornamentation to allow a pure expression of the function of the building. The major pioneers of this movement are Walter Gropius and Mies van der Rohe. The Bauhaus school was heavily influential in this era, as was Le Corbusier. The elements of modern buildings that I am particularly interested in are found in buildings that are called modern glass homes. This comes from the large amount of glazing used. I feel like that one should be obvious. These take direct inspiration from Mies van der Rohe's Barcelona pavilion, which he created a space with very few walls, where glazing acted as most of the external walls. Structurally, they used pilotis for the building to stand. Typically, pilotis are small thin columns which are meant to hold up and act as posts for a building, elevating it off the floor, but instead, the Barcelona pavilion simply uses them to lift up the roof. This provides a space where the roof is seemingly floating on nothing. These modern glass homes aim to simulate this aesthetic by mass surrounding their homes with glazing, using structural beams between the glazing to act as the columns that hold them up. Often the roof of the dwelling will overshoot the actual space of the home itself. If you look at this home, remove the glass and leave it open to the elements, leaving only a roof, the floors and the pilotis, well, there you have it. It's Barbie's dream house. If you are desperate to learn more about the architecture of Barbie's dream houses, I do recommend Barbie Dreamhouse, an architectural survey. It is 71 quid, so I didn't get it for this video. But it looks like it goes into insane depth. Like, they actually have drawn the elevations of the dream houses to scale. Weird Barbie. The ultimate conclusion of giving a bunch of children, toys where they let their destructive and artistic tendencies fly. They draw on them, cut their hair and outfits, rip limbs off, or contort them into unholy shapes. I'm told everyone who owned a Barbie has at least one weird Barbie. Hell, I know I was probably the reason my younger sister had weird Barbies, by letting my own destructive tendencies out on her toys. Every Barbie needs her dream house, and Weird Barbie is no different, with her very own dream house. But just like herself, her dream house is a little weird. With Barbie's dream house being a modern home, there is a pretty obvious next step for where to take Weird Barbie's home: postmodernism. Like everything in the world, for every action there must be an equal and opposite reaction. Postmodernism was the reaction to modernism. I mean, it pretty plainly states it in the name. Postmodernism came onto the scene as modernism began to dwindle in the late 60s. Much like modernism, both are still seen in new constructions today though. One of the significant influences on postmodernism was a man called Robert Venturi, who wrote The Complexity and Contradiction in Architecture. In this text, he discusses the issues and inconsistencies present with Roman architecture. However, he also celebrates pop culture and a quote-unquote ordinary architecture of American high streets. In practice, Venturi was calling for a rediscovering of the meanings of objects of the past and applying them to modern structures, which ultimately created this weird, whimsical architecture. Sarah Greenwood and Katie Spencer describe the weird house as referencing two buildings: Boo Radley's house in To Kill a Mockingbird, as well as the classic house in Hitchcock's Psycho. This description of Boo Radley's house and the house in Psycho both give a very familiar image to that of Weird Dreamhouse, a lone house up on a hill by itself. However, I think the comparisons have an issue, as both homes are a traditional and decrepit, neither of which the Weird Dreamhouse is. Now, I think the best comparison is in fact the house from Beetlejuice. Both the houses in Beetlejuice and Weird Dreamhouse are lone houses on the hill, but they aren't run down. However, both showcase unnatural and non-linear shapes. Where the comparison really begins to thrive though is after the renovation by the Dietz family, as it wholly becomes postmodern. Weird Dreamhouse does not have a single parallel line within its form. There are no right angles. Even the places that look like they have a right angle are in fact just a little too acute, or a little too obtuse. There are walls that define rooms that seemingly exist on both the floor above and below simultaneously. The home's colours are warped and twisted. The house itself has no one consistent colour, and different building elements instead have their own consistent colouring. The colours dance across the walls. Some walls are solid block colours, some denote false materials, but others are just swirls of colour. The shape of Weird Dreamhouse is very familiar to a working company today. Studio Libeskind, Daniel Libeskind's company. The few homes they have designed showcase and feature similar ideas of single-story spaces, where all the walls kick out at wild angles. However, I would argue that Weird Dreamhouse plays more with postmodernism than Libeskind. The wonderful soft pastel roof of what may have once been a roof to a typical home plays with postmodernism's tendencies to play with existing architectural features. Then there are the wild colours of the building. Libeskind's work tends to be very mute in colour, sticking to greys and browns, whereas Barbie's is nearly every colour in the spectrum. Parts of the building also remind me of Peter Eisman's House No. 3. For this house, Eisman split a cube into a 9x9 grid, then rotated the cube 45 degrees, leaving the grid behind. Using these spaces to create a home, this creates an external frame outside the building that the building is still connected to. These shapes and forms are similar to the mysterious rooms in the Weird Dreamhouse, which seem to exist on 2 floors at once. Or perhaps his House No. 6, which featured stairs you could see but were inaccessible and led nowhere. Though at least it isn't actually House No. 6, otherwise Weird Barbie's romantic life would never last. When Ken returns home to Barbieland, he brings with him a very warped perception of patriarchy. However, what he does know is enough to allow him to entirely flip the tables on Barbieland and create Kendom. Kendom is and isn't masculinity. In the same way, Barbieland is and isn't femininity. After all, Ken doesn't have a set standard for what masculinity even is, or what it means to him, due to only having existed in a hyper-feminine world and his tiny amount of experience in the real world. Instead, Kendom is, like all gender expression, a performance. It amplifies things seen as masculine from the 70s to the modern day. Masculine men go to the gym and use protein? Wonderful. Then here there will be a mountain of protein powder tubs, despite the fact they all have Adonis bodies without ever touching the gym. Masculine men are in charge of the TV remote. Then there must be a stack of DVD players, TV consoles and VHS players ready for men to be in charge of. Sheila Jeffries wrote in Gender Hurts, "Masculinity is part of a binary and requires its opposite, since in the absence of femininity, masculinity would have no meaning." This quote establishes and showcases the binary way that Barbieland understands gender, that the opposite of femininity is masculinity, and the opposite of Barbie is Ken. We can see this here with the introduction of leather. Before Kendom, there was no black in Barbieland. It just wasn't part of the colour palette. Yet now with the introduction of leather, it is everywhere. From leather couches to leather punching bags to leather waistcoats to leather boots. Black antennas for their black TVs against their black gym equipment. Yet due to this being a warped perception of what it means to be masculine, they don't just overperform masculine things. They grab items that are not traditionally masculine and force them to be. Lava lamps and headbands are portrayed as masculine and have become prominent in this world, yet none of them carry such masculine connotations in our world. Perhaps this is a British thing as well, due to the lack of a cowboy culture here, but to me, horses are specifically a feminine interest. Yet here in Kendom, the horse is the patriarchy. It is masculinity. This itself proves the dichotomy and issue with masculinity. It's not a universal truth. It's something which denotes manhood in the US is in fact the opposite here in the UK. Nevertheless, Ken purely based this connection between horses and masculinity on two interactions in the real world. Seeing cops on horses and seeing this clip of a cowboy. This was enough for him to pick up this book on horses. Of the 4 books he grabs, this is the only one that had nothing to do with men. That is all Ken needs or knows. He found the horses to be cool, so they must be masculine. Barbie shows 2 consistencies across Barbieland and Kendom for what the Kens see as what it means to be a Ken or to be a man. The first is the need to seek approval from a Barbie.
But Ken only has a great day if Barbie looks at him.
Both in Barbieland and Kendom, Ken's ultimate aim is to gain approval from Barbie. He creates Kendom in hopes that this new assertion of his strength will finally gain her approval.
I'm ready to be your long-term, distance, low-commitment, casual girlfriend.
Sublime!
This is juxtaposed by Barbie, who does not care or seek the approval of any Ken.
Oh, but I don't want you here.
The second is the approval of other Kens, though this is displayed through competition with other Kens. War in the real world is shown to be something that men do, and we see this play out in Ken Battle. But it's also shown prior to their interaction with the real world.
And you can't make me look uncool in front of Ken.
Ken's not cool!
He is to me.
This is juxtaposed by the fact that Barbies don't fight. They work together and approve of one another. Ken doesn't learn what it means to be a man or what masculinity is in the real world. He simply discovers a new way to portray what it already means to be a Ken. Yet throughout the movie, a blatant juxtaposition is shown to Ken, shown to what it means to be a man. Alan. There are also Glorious Husband, Sugar Daddy Ken, and Magic Earring Ken. Although these are only for the audience benefit, all of these men show alternate versions of what it means to be a man. Alan is no less manly than Ken. After all, when he needs to protect Gloria and Sasha, he can fight many Kens at once. The ability to fight is something that Kens would definitely see as being very masculine. But Alan doesn't just fight. No, he protects Gloria, Sasha, and the Barbies, which is something that in our world is seen to be very masculine. The way that Ken heals in the end is the discovery of 2 things. To be a man does not mean they have to be in competition with one another, and instead, Kens can build each other up. And to be a man, he does not need the approval of a love interest. So Kendom is a plastic vision of what it means to be a man. Kendom is shown by juxtaposing it against Barbieland. Where Barbieland is perfect, Kendom is where many ugly items are thrown together. The set is littered with items of fake masculinity. Gym equipment, sports equipment, games, TV, beer, cars and guitars. Perhaps it is even more artificial than Barbieland, as it's simply a veneer. After all, their world doesn't actually change. It's still Barbieland. The pinks, the yellows, they are still there. The masculinity is just a facade on top of it, trying to hide and mask the Barbie that's beneath. But in the end, they don't even rectify the issues with Barbieland. The Kens, at best, are promised,
And one day, the Kens will have as much power and influence in Barbieland as women have in the real world.
I love this movie, but what a horrendous way to end it. It's fiction. Why do we have to end it with such a despotic view of the future? Why aren't the Kens equal with the Barbies at the end? Why can't the Mojo Dojo Casa House exist alongside the Dreamhouses? We could have shown this world to be revolutionary, shown a world where women and men are equal. But no. The thing is, patriarchy is damaging to both men and women. This does not mean that men don't gain some privileges due to this system. We definitely do. But young boys are indoctrinated to wear a mask by being forced to feel pain, but then being denied the ability to express emotions. This causes men to become emotional cripples, in the words of feminist author Bell Hooks in her book Will to Change. In this book, she also states the need to understand that both men and women play their roles in upholding patriarchy. This isn't something just men alone can dismantle. The failure at the end of Barbie to not make Ken and Barbie's equals is due to this missing understanding from its creators. The final message of Barbie should have been to dismantle the patriarchy and fight for women's rights. Through the transitory places of space, tandem biking, and camping, Barbie and Ken enter the real world, where everything around them is real. Which begs the question, how'd this employee get into his cubicle? Like, it shows every side of his office cubicle, like with no exit. Does he just climb over the cubicle walls whenever he needs to get to work? Or the fact that when walking through a door in an office hallway, you enter a void which shows only the interior of a single room in a house, though this room is missing a wall as if it were a room in a traditional dollhouse. The colours of the real world may be subdued, but it doesn't mean it's any less fantastical. It's no less surreal. In fact, the surrealism of Barbie reaches its full heights when they enter the real world. After all, Barbieland's surrealism is consistent with its world. When Ken and Ken fight, they stop and enter a dream ballet based on the set of the Dream Ballet in Singing in the Rain. That's not jarring, it makes sense. Of course a cathartic emotional scene in Barbieland must be showcased through dance. The issue with surrealism in Barbieland is it's already artificial. It's doing surrealism in an already surreal world. Whereas this is the real world, isn't it? I mean, that's what they call it in the introduction. The map is called the real world map. Gloria and Sasha are called
humans.
And when Barbie becomes human, this is the world she begins to inhabit. It must be the real world, right? But why is Mattel designed in such a hellish fashion where the elevator core is in the middle of this impossibly tall room in a skyscraper with no windows to the outside world, but instead, giant emblazoned Mattel logos are placed on the walls? Perhaps the only natural light is these pin lights between the cubicles, but yet again, we are in a skyscraper, how is the light coming straight down when there are floors above? Why is the top floor button called all the way up? Why is it being portrayed as if this man is going to heaven when he goes up there? Yet when he gets there, at the end of this corridor, he meets a woman he already knows. What does he think? She's just dead or she's just trapped there and he's not doing anything about it? Why, when they're chasing Barbie, are they all running in random but orderly directions, and when Barbie decides to make her last desperate sprint to a door, she does it from in front of another door? Why does this lead to another hellish Brazil-esque corridor of pure concrete grey, with doors with no labels or windows which stretch out into infinity, yet the only exit to this corridor is via the dollhouse room void? Why, when she walks across the threshold of the room, is there now an actual wall behind her? Why is there a stairwell in a closet, and how far up this skyscraper is Barbie that it's feasible for her to use the stairs, because outside the windows it looks like they're already on the ground floor? It comes as no surprise that all of these surrealist moments in the real world are experienced inside Mattel's skyscraper. Not Miami Beach, Century City, Sasha's school, or Barbie's gynecologist, but inside Mattel. The surrealism in these moments come in two different forms: the dystopian view of corporate living, and the loving embrace of a home. Greta Gerwig, Sarah Greenwood, and Katie Spencer and their team made a movie about Barbie, which is owned by a corporate entity called Mattel, in which the movie criticizes Mattel and companies like it. It's quite often why Will Ferrell's character is portrayed as quite stupid. After all, he is the CEO. Whereas the surrealism of the home is used to showcase that maybe at some point Mattel had this warmth with it as well, but it's now kept deep within the cracks and crevices of their building. It's a very liberal view on corporate power. Despite what you might think, these surrealist moments are some of the best moments of this movie for me. As this channel develops, you'll only understand more of it. I simply adore the surreal from Andrew Brenton to this day. Now look, I don't believe our dreams have any meaning attached to them, nor do I think that getting in touch with our subconsciousness will make us any more revolutionary. However, I do think surrealist art is often one of the best methods of prescribing meaning to an otherwise mundane object. Our collective obsession with spotting patterns and attempting to decipher the absurd allows surrealist art to fit that niche. The surrealist art is not the absurd, it only attempts to mimic it, allowing us to prescribe our meanings to it, much like we try to do with the absurd. In other words, part of our world, specifically the world of corporations, is as plastic and artificial as that of Barbies. Look, there isn't going to be a better movie that I can use as a jumping off point to discuss this topic. So you're going to have to indulge me, because this is an important topic that needs to be discussed. There is a gigantic gender difference in the architectural field. Let me put this in perspective. Only 34% of architects in the UK identify as female. The gender distribution of the UK as a whole is 51% female to 49% male, and 57% of women have a higher education degree compared to only 43% of men. Yet somehow, only 34% of architects are women. This is compounded by the fact, on average, there is a 16% pay gap between men and women in architecture. I personally have first-hand experience of a female colleague of equal qualifications and experience getting lower pay than I was. Now, look, I'm not some liberal who thinks putting a woman in charge will fix everything. The UK is proof that it doesn't. Fuck Thatcher. However, I know we actively hurt ourselves and the built environment by not including women in its designs. Our homes, towns and cities are designed by men, for men, and this actively hurts us men too. Fortunately, we have some outstanding thinkers like Leslie Kern, who wrote Feminist Cities, Claiming Space in a Man-Made World, who applies revolutionary feminist thought, her knowledge as a feminist geographer, and research to those of urbanist areas to help us see these areas that we could improve. Much of this text revolves around specific areas and spaces that alter and change negatively when being a woman in different stages of their life. Ultimately, Leslie Kern advocates for what she refers to as the city of care. And this truly would be a better city, not just for women, but for men too. One small example she mentions is the creation of public toilets and baby changing rooms. No matter your gender, you've been stuck in a city, desperate for the toilet, but with nowhere to go that doesn't require you to buy something first. This change, irrespective of your gender, is a good change. Our world, our built environment, and our homes would be far better if we allowed for an abundance of different thoughts. The best way to achieve these different thoughts is through differences in lived experiences, and there's almost no bigger way to experience the world differently than just being a different gender to someone. Now, my channel is small, but for those of you who are interested, there are several groups who are working towards addressing this particular issue. I would like to now introduce you to WIA, Women in Architecture, an advocacy group that has a mentorship program. They pair a female mentee with a female mentor. I think this mentor program is wonderful and something that more people should be helping out with, especially if you can be a mentor. I implore you to apply, and by all means, if you want to be a mentee, you can also go and apply. The applications for next year's mentorship program begins in October, so soon you will be able to submit your applications. WIA isn't purely a mentorship program, they also host events across the country. Their link is in the description if you're interested to learn more about what they do. Or there is the Part W, an award-winning research group which is specifically aiming and targeting their research towards the built environment and how it can disadvantage non-cis male gender identities, who just this year created their recent advocacy program called #BuiltBarriers, which calls upon people of all genders to document visibly designed barriers which limit access for non-cis male identities, so we can learn to better address them. When I spoke to Part W, they specifically made it clear the importance that they are calling on all genders, not just women, to document these barriers, as just like I said in the masculinity segment, it is going to take all of us to overcome this issue. Something else that I love about Part W is not only have they achieved actual impact on the design of our cities and the architecture industry as a whole, but they run as a volunteer group. But due to being volunteers, it's sometimes difficult for them to run. So I know they are actively looking for sponsors to help them take their work to even greater heights. If you want to know more, their link is also down in the description below. There is also Black females in architecture. There is not only a gender issue in architecture here in the UK, but there is also a race one, something that we will be covering in an deeper extent in a future video. Nevertheless, BFA deserves to have their work to help the women within this intersection championed. They are a membership network which helps with networking, education and advocacy. This month, BFA is hosting an exhibition as part of the London Festival of Architecture, which features a film and some of their other research outputs. I'm unfortunately not in London, but if you do happen to be there this month, I would implore you to visit their exhibition. Again, if you want to know more, their link is in the description below. Last, but by no means least, there is FAME, Female Architects of Minority Ethnic. FAME is a research network who are looking into specific and systemic issues within architecture and the barriers that those present throughout the industry, whether that is in practice or in education. They've produced several research reports since their founding, with some assistance from the RIBA. If you want to learn more, perhaps even get their research book, the link is in the description. The list of these groups is exhaustive and I can't talk about them all. However, I have tried to include the groups I've been following for a while and know the work of. However, as the list is so exhaustive, I've included those I couldn't mention in the description. And if you know of one that I haven't mentioned, by all means, shout it out in the comments and I'll add it to that list. There are many systemic reasons and causes for the fact there are fewer women in architecture than there are men. These range from barriers in education, because the whole process takes a minimum of 7 years, and on average takes 9. There have been a large number of studies into women in architecture who simply do not fulfill their Part 3s to become fully qualified, or simply drop out or after the Part 1 stage. Then there are issues with practice. Then there are the issues with practice and the fact that only 34% of women are architects, meaning sexism can often be found to be quite prevalent within architectural practices. I used to work at one where it was commonplace. This is such an issue that a man accused of sexually harassing multiple of his female employees received the RIBA Gold Medal Award. Now, WIA, BFA, FAME and Part W are wonderful groups that have already helped and will continue to help to address some of these issues, but we need them to be bigger and more powerful, and that's where you guys step in. So please, check those links in the description and go help them as much as you can. Finally, I am a cis guy, so I can utilize the resources that these advocacy groups put out, but I can't give you guys my own personal experience of what it's like. So I decided to interview one of my colleagues. It is a little bit rough. It's the first time I've ever interviewed someone. We're also doing it in the office, so you might be able to hear some people in the background, doors opening and closing, stuff like that. It is going to be by no means perfect, but I think the perspective that she can provide here is too valuable not to include. So without further ado, here is the interview. You mentioned about a few weeks ago now, and I overheard you stating that you wanted to be an architect since you were 12 years old. I wanted to be an architect since I was 8, so I'm really curious how other people also decided they wanted to be one.
Yeah, so it was actually, so when I was in high school, they had like an industry day specifically aimed at getting young women into construction.
Oh, okay.
I can't remember, was it CABE that did it? I can't remember, but it was some big kind of like company that's still going. Yeah, so it's specifically just for like young girls, aiming at getting them into construction. And we had basically put you into groups, and they gave everybody in the group like you're the quantity surveyor, you're the project manager, you're the architect. Like this is what those roles do. Like swap around if you want, have a go at each role, and just kind of gave you a mini project to have a go at throughout the day. And because I'd always been like really into art and design, and like really good at maths, and I enjoyed them both. Go together well, and both those strengths and interests can be used in architecture.
On that one, how much do you even use maths? I don't really use maths anymore. I love maths as well. It's partly why I like architecture, but I don't really use it.
At the moment, more than anything, just to work out markup percentages on things. It's the most I use maths at the minute. Yeah, not as much as I thought. Gradients, sometimes.
For like stairs and stuff.
Gradients and percentages are about gradient percentages, angles.
So, like for me, I had a lot of influence in my family. Like my dad's quite a surveyor, so it's my uncle sort of thing. So that's partly why I ended up in construction. But you had like none of that?
None of that, no. I'm from a very working class background. Like my dad was a mechanic, my mum was a school lady.
Oh, okay.
And then their parents were, my dad's parents were a mechanic, and my nan was a midwife, but she retired at 15. I don't remember ever working. So I kind of grew up in a very working class area, a very working class background, but was always sort of like very encouraged to go to uni if that's what you want. Like, it wasn't like, you don't need that, you need practical skills. It was very much, probably pushed too much, if anything, university. But I think that was just at the time. I'm only 33 now, so when I was at high school 20 years ago, uni was like, they wanted everyone to go. And it was sort of pushed as the only route to be successful.
I mean, it was still the same when I was there as well.
I think they're getting better now at not necessarily pushing that agenda so much and recognising that it's not for everyone. And obviously, like, I would have gone anyway because you need to be an architect. Even the apprenticeships are not really.
Even then.
You still need to get a degree first.
You
do a 4-year apprenticeship. But I think it's good that they're now acknowledging that it's not right to be pushing that route on everyone.
Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, that's one of the things I remember a few years ago. I was part of the effort that helped push for that. And part of the reason why that was the case was for people like ourselves that come from like working class backgrounds, and also women as well. It's really difficult to dedicate like this amount of time to like not even be fully qualified. Like I'm on my 8th year and still not fully qualified.
It's so long. I think at the time when I signed up at 18, you're like, oh, that's the uni experience for 7 years. That'll be great. But I think after, I was certainly kind of done with it after the first 3 years. I was like, I don't actually want to be living with strangers in share houses and having that uni lifestyle anymore. That's why I did my masters part-time.
Oh, okay.
That's again because I was with my now husband since I was 18. So after I finished my undergrad, did 2 years at part 1. Okay. Because I don't want to go back to uni yet. And then they offered to pay for me to do it part-time. Okay. I did that.
So how long until you were fully qualified then?
I was 3, 5, Well, like 11 years.
11 years.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Yeah.
I feel bad with being about age.
Yeah. Well, it was, my 3-year undergrad, I did 2 years work experience, and then the master's degree part-time was 5 years.
Right.
And then I did my part 3 straight away.
Right, okay.
Because I'd obviously already got
You had like 7 years of
experience by then.
That makes sense.
Yeah, I went straight into part 3.
Yeah, wow.
But obviously, like, seemed like a long time, and I said, doing it part-time, it is hard. And I don't have the best time management skills, if I'm honest, but, I did it, and it means I kind of came out of it with that 7 years experience.
Yeah, that's a lot.
And, by the time I was kind of became fully qualified, I was married and I bought a house.
Yeah.
So I was kind of doing that at the same time, I suppose.
Yeah, like that life stuff seems to be partly the reason why it takes women either so much longer in general, or they just never end up doing it. Like, we've got both and in the office who are both much older than I am. Part 2 is like I am, but because they've decided to start a family, it's all just been pushed back for them. Yeah,
that was instantly what came into my head when you were saying about more women taking longer or not doing it. Is that I think it's so hard if you choose to have a family.
Yeah.
Because you think, so I was doing it part-time, and then I bought a house, got married, but those things don't take over your life. They're just events that are a little bit stressful at the time, and then they happen, and it's done. Not like having a family, which is kind of all-encompassing, 24/7 forever.
Yeah.
It's not a temporary pressure.
Yeah.
It's permanent, and I just, 'cause even if you did it, straight 18, straight through to 25 or whatever, the earliest you could do it. Some people, I think, I don't want to be waiting until I'm 25 to start even thinking about having a family. Because as well, it's probably, I've spent all that time in education, you want to have a bit of time to yourself before you have kids. Yeah. And then it's like the age old, your body clock's ticking now when you get to 30.
Yeah.
So completely understand if you're someone who knows you want a family and that's always like a priority to you, why you would put it on hold. So, like the studies and the qualification on hold. So
do you attribute it, like, having been able to do it, I mean, it still took you 11 years, but is that partly how you attribute to you actually managing to be fully qualified is because of your choice to not have kids?
I think it definitely helps.
Yeah.
Where I would fit kids in to that process. I think I'd have definitely been in my 30s by the time I'd comfortably be able to have kids without having to, because I wouldn't want to be in a position where I have to put my studies above them or whatever. But to do that, like I say, I'd have to be in my 30s before I could even think about having kids.
Is there any point that you can think of where being a woman in this industry has impacted you?
Yes. So.
You don't have to go for it, but if you want.
Definitely. Right from the first thing I always remember at uni, even though I think generally my education, I feel like it was quite very equal. Other than the fact that men and women deal with the pressure differently. But I remember being told, when we were doing our CVs and stuff in final year of undergrad, not to put your first name on, don't allude to the fact that you're female on your CV. Wow, so don't put just put at the time, and then because it will put employers off if they think, right, we're going to invest in this person, and then they might go on maternity leave.
Yeah.
And I've actually heard it in practice before when someone has been about to go interview a female candidate, and they've said, how can we find out if they've got kids or if they want kids without directly asking it? Because you're not allowed to directly ask that question.
Quite rightly, yeah.
Quite rightly, and I was like, you just don't find out. Because it doesn't matter. There's someone there's a male who has kids of their own. I mean, we've had male staff here who are single dads.
Yeah.
I don't think about asking every male candidate if they're a single father or if they've got kids that are going to get in the way of their jobs.
Yeah.
So there's definitely that. I think the kid thing, obviously, I've chosen not to have kids, but I think it's such a huge thing. Like, companies will advertise that they're family friendly, but I still think a lot of companies' idea of family friendly is based on you not being the main carer.
Yeah.
Which traditionally most fathers are not.
Yeah.
Because, their wife will have a part-time job, they'll do the school run, so that they don't have to. But I think that is changing because it's a lot more shared now, which is good. And dads want to be more involved. They want to go to the kids' assemblies and stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was definitely one that both at uni and in practice I've come across. I don't know like how deep you want to go.
As deep as you want.
I have had one thing as as a young woman in architecture more so than I have had multiple older male colleagues, not old, but older than me male colleagues hit on me inappropriately. Married men that knew I was in a long-term committed relationship that have tried it on and then progressed to try even when I've said no. I've been pinned up against a wall by one of them. One of them tried to put their hand up my dress. It's like after work dues.
Yeah.
It's like walking to get a taxi together or whatever. And so at the time these were I was new, I was the only woman in the team. These were quite senior men in the team, and I didn't say anything because I just thought, I'm just gonna, I'm just out to cause trouble. They're not gonna believe me over these men that have been there years.
Yeah.
And so I know it's not like that everywhere. And I think at this practice, generally they're quite good with women. Like, it's not I don't feel like you experience sexism. I think the opportunities are, other than like the childcare element generally, I think is tough. Which obviously I can't speak from experience on that. But yeah, I think the same opportunities are afforded to everyone, and there is, I think if anything like that happened here, we've got HR in place where I think I would feel a lot more comfortable here speaking up about something like that. At the old company, we call it the whistleblower, was that person I was probably would be not that he wasn't one of the people that it were inappropriate towards me, but he was probably it's the person I would be least likely to go to if I had an issue.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was very much in that practice. I sat there when I was 21. Other than like the receptionist, the cleaner, and there was one structural engineer upstairs, which was technically a separate practice, all male. So it was very loud and brash and overwhelming.
Yeah.
Like a 21-year-old woman.
So, I mean, that's quite unfortunate to hear that you've had to deal with that.
Yeah. I mean, it didn't go any further than that because it was both times in public spaces, so you couldn't go any further than they tried. But I just think, well, if I had been not in public or more drunk or whatever, like on like a completely different sort of side of the coin, you get treated differently on like and by kind of sort of like middle-aged, maybe like mid-30s and older, but they think they're doing it out of respect, that they're like, will apologise for swearing around you, and things like that.
That's a good one.
Like, and I'm like, that's okay, like, my delicate ears can handle it, it's fine.
Yeah.
And they think that's being respectful. They're like, I'd rather you just act exactly the same.
Yeah.
I mean, as long as you're not being actually sexist,
Yeah.
what you're saying, like, just act the same as you would.
Mm-hmm.
And if you would have normally acted sexist with no women around, well, probably should do that anyway.
Yeah.
Or like, I was on a job the other week and I was up in the site cabin. I was in a different room to the site manager on my laptop. And one of the guys walked in and started talking about something. It's just joking around, and then when he realised I was in there, he was like, oh God, why don't you make yourself known?
They probably shouldn't have to.
Like, obviously that, it's not the end of the world.
Yeah.
But I don't think they should feel like they have to do that around women. Like,
yeah.
But it's not doing me any harm or holding me back at all.
Yeah. I mean, that's a curious one. I know we've spoken a bit about how, like, you'd be treated, like, in studios and in practices and stuff like that. Has working with contractors been any different? Or do you think that's been pretty much the same?
Yeah, I think actually contractors are better than I would have expected. But generally, yeah, they do just kind of speak to you.
Okay.
I've found anyway, they don't tend to undermine you, or they just treat you like a professional part of the team.
Yeah.
Which I would have thought the more negative experience I would have would be the on-site stuff.
Yeah.
Where it is a bit more like lads.
Yeah.
But,
yeah, the tradies.
yeah, exactly. But you don't really deal with the tradesmen that closely.
Yeah.
It is, you are still working, with the office site team, aren't you? You're just like walking past them on site, hi, are you alright? Never had any negative interactions.
That's good.
With anyone like on site that I can remember, and they generally are, just treat you like a professional.
Nice.
Respect what you're there to do.
Yeah, that sounds great.
So that, I'm sure other people have not had that experience.
Yeah.
But I've probably found like in-office treatment, and again, not always intentional.
Mm-hmm.
I think what I've found here, again, I think they try very hard to make sure that everyone has the same opportunities, regardless of race, gender, whatever here. But I've found that I sometimes feel like I'm just viewed as she's just a moaning woman. Again, because with the other team leaders, historically pretty much being male, but generally they've all been male. And they just don't raise issues. They'll talk about issues outside, like to each other. But then I find I'm always the one that's raising problems and complaining, so to speak. So then it just gets brushed off as though it's just being a whingy bitch again.
Yeah.
Because there's still that sort of stigma around women that they just like to moan for no good reason. And I do feel like I've been kind of put under that heading a little bit. When I don't. Like, what I'm saying is I have good reason to complain, and even now I'm leaving, I'm raising concerns that have literally no impact on me because I'm leaving next week.
Yeah.
I just want something to be done about it for the other people that are staying, because I want things to be better. So it's like, I'm not just complaining for the sake of it, because it literally doesn't impact me anymore.
Yeah.
but I'm trying to make a difference. It's just, I'm not gone down very well.
No, that's absolutely fine. I think we'll end it there.
Well, that is it. Thank you guys for watching the video, and I really do hope you enjoyed that final segment. It was a lot of fun, and I think really important to put together. But yeah, we thankfully managed to be underneath the 10-month target that I put in the last video. And that is on top of me spending a lot of time writing a John Wick script, which had to be abandoned because of the announcement of John Wick 5. But I'm slowly getting there with this editing stuff. We are speeding up the production so things can hopefully move a lot faster. And I've also been getting in the process of writing a bit more scripts along the side of working on the editing process, which means, unlike the last time, I now have a couple scripts that are in their final stages rather than simply having to write a whole new script from the start. There is one script in particular that I'm going to be moving towards for the next one, so I can announce. I don't want to announce fully what it is yet. I mean, I've got to remain a little bit mysterious. What I can say is, following the ending of Barbie, where we stepped our foot into politics just a little bit in terms of construction, the next one is going to be a deep dive into some politics and construction. In particular, we are talking about the largest construction project that is currently happening. It is a very vital topic that is continuing to get worse as I speak. So even the minuscule amount of attention that I can bring that topic is going to be incredibly important for our industry as a whole. With that little teaser for the next video, let's wrap this video up. So, I am a part of the architecture community Discord, so please, if you want to, join us. We are a public Discord that anyone can join, whether you are just an enthusiast about architecture or an architect or someone that's studying it. Everyone is welcome. And with that, thank you for watching the video, and I'll catch you again soon.